So much of life is about the people you meet. Many of the people that we meet in life seem to be coming around just by happenstance, but I believe there is more to it. There are bigger forces at work. People come into and go out of our lives for a reason, and we might notice this and work out what the reason is, and we might not. But because of free will, we have the power to put ourselves into places where we are likely to meet people who can help us on our path, who can add value to our lives, and to whom we can add value in their lives. This is essentially the purpose of networking. Networking is intentional. It is one of the most powerful things you can do to elevate your business or status in whatever your endeavors are. This September 6th, my partner Renee V and I have organized an amazing opportunity for networking with high-level individuals all gathered together in a room of unprecedented energy with a curated selection of major thought leaders who will be speaking to the group and sharing their wisdom, motivation, and inspiration. It's the Rich Thinking Conference in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, September 6th. A whole day event, including breakfast and lunch and networking and these amazing speakers. You can go ahead and do the research on our speaker lineup by checking them out at richthinking.org to see the full list. And you'll see that this is a networking opportunity of a lifetime. And the speakers are phenomenal, but the people who are coming to this event are also major players, creators, idea people, entrepreneurs, movers and shakers, and people just like you who are building and growing. You do not want to miss this chance. Something special happens when you put yourself into a place like this, where the frequency is raised, the people are pumped, and the words are spoken to create magic in your life. It's transformational, and we still have room in the room for you if you act fast. Get your tickets at richthinking.org. Welcome back to Blessings, friends. I know I say this often, but guys, I'm so excited for this conversation. It's going to be unreal. Here is something from the website of my guest today, the author of the memoir From Punk to Monk. Bhakti is a beautiful and natural practice of taking the ego self out of the center and placing the divine at the center. Bhakti is about service instead of selfishness. By shifting our actions and consciousness away from self-absorption and towards unity in diversity, we can begin to see the spark of divinity in all living beings. When I first read that, it brought me to tears. And when I read his book, I was blown away. He's a yogi. He was the lead singer and songwriter of two internationally acclaimed punk hardcore bands that flipped the punk narrative on its head with the positive message. He spent 6.5 years as a monk, but these days he is a householder with 3 kids, a farm, and a retreat center in upstate New York. And he hosts a daily podcast called Wisdom of Sages. He teaches others how to receive the love, light, and life-altering truths of yoga. And I'm so pleased to bring his teachings to you today. Welcome, Raghunath, formerly Ray, Cappo.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
Thank you. I love it when I hear about people and things that I wasn't previously aware of, like you. And I wonder, there are so many ways that I see myself in this person or thing that I've just been introduced to. How could I not have known about it until now? So what would you say about our awareness and the timing of life and the way experiences, meetings, and connections come to us?
That's a great question. And I think I had the most realization about that. It became very vivid to me when I did finish my book, Punk to Monk, because as you write a memoir, especially a spiritual memoir of your journey through your life and through your pitfalls and your screw ups and your good fortune and your lack of fortune and health, and you start to realize how people have been sent to you your entire life. And sometimes when I reflect back on my life, I was like, yeah, that was an important moment. And I didn't see it at the time, but that was a messenger. And whether you call it God or higher power or Krishna or Jesus or Buddha, there are messengers sent to us because The thought in the Vedic teachings of ancient India is that there is a benevolent source, and to the degree that you want to recommit yourself to your identity, which is we're spiritual, we have a spiritual identity. To the degree that we want to recommit ourselves to our spiritual identity, then there is a benevolent force that is eager to seek you out as well. And therefore, messengers get sent. And that's the whole idea of the concept of guru or of teacher, that people get sent to you. And as we decide, this is what I want, it's almost like the power of intention, but towards pure spirit. And then you start to realize, wow, there's been a book on my shelf for 20 years that I never read. And that is so significant and so important for me. There's a person within my community that I have questions for. It's always been right in front of your face, but at a certain point, due to life circumstances, you weren't really ready to go there. But once you turn towards light or to truth or to love, and you start to make these statements like, what? This material thing is a joke. I have to solve my material problems with a spiritual solution. Then watch the magic start to happen in your life.
Yeah.
It just does.
It does. It's very true. Yes. At different points in my own life, I have tuned in more and tapped in more strongly. And I'm in the phase of doing that again now. And it really is interesting the way it works.
Yeah. It's as if it's magic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we were born in the same year, 1966.
Right. Very good year.
It was a good year. And I did not find yoga until I was in my 30s. And I was fully entrenched in motherhood and what you call householding, which I love that term. Yeah. And so what was different about you that allowed you to travel to India and just go all in on the spiritual path? What prevents people from doing that? And is it the Maya that you just alluded to that we prefer? Or is it the devil? Is it the ego? What is it?
I think people sometimes get a calling at a young age. Sometimes they get it in midlife crises. They start thinking, what am I working for? What am I doing with my life? Sometimes they get it in their old age. They realize, what have I done with my life? And sometimes people never get that calling in their life at all. I don't know why. I got a sort of a calling at a younger age, but I've always had an interest in spirituality. And there were some obvious factors in my life that if you, at least externally, if you look at it, there was some like success at a young age doing music. And then there was some tragedy at a young age with the loss of my father. And sometimes with success, we think we're going to be happier. And I think it's probably a lot of your audience can resonate with this, that sometimes success brings us more frustration. We find that the world is more competitive. We find that the very thing I love doing is driving me crazy now. And sometimes that success in the workplace makes us sadder. We were happier before doing our art or our music or our cooking or whatever we did just for the joy of doing it. And so I found that there was just more pressure as the band got bigger. Mm. And I found that when my father died, it was this almost like a pillar of stability that I think for a lot of us who's had a wrinkle-free life, which is maybe not many of us, especially at our age, but we start to realize, oh, I get it. The material world is random. People are dying randomly. People are getting chronic disease randomly. People are getting fortunes randomly, it seems. People are losing everything randomly. And so it's, what is the randomness of death? What is that about? And I thought life was solid. I thought life was really solid. And when you start to realize, no, the actual material world melts like a sandcastle. It's only a matter of time. Don't you get it? That's not your father dying, dude. That's you dying. Don't you understand? It's random for you to die also. And those things together made me start to question, what is success in this world? I felt like I was at the bottom of a ladder going, where do I want to put this? What wall do I want to lean this ladder against? What is a win? What is a home run? What is the final destination? And I think when we ask those questions, that's the beginning of our life. Otherwise, other forces co-opt us and lead us. Sometimes, I was good in school and a headhunter came and he put me in this job and I've been working this job for 40 years and I don't even know what I want to do in life. These are like these pivotal questions. These change the trajectory of our life. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to do in this short life? Those are massive, important questions that we should ask ourselves before we get swept up in romance, swept up in popping out kids. I popped that a bunch, and swept up in maybe even education. How many people go to university without having any idea what they want to do with with themselves? So it's important before we like speed down the highway to pull over the car and check the map. Make sure we didn't miss our exit. Make sure, what good is our speeding if I missed the exit? And so that's what I think that this soul searching is important. And as far as yoga goes, because punk was so alternative back then, I was just into alternative things. In the 80s, there was no yoga on every corner. It was very weird to be into yoga. It was like alternative life, especially in New York City. I was in the punk scene. That was alternative. It wasn't corporate music. It wasn't corporate rock. Yoga wasn't your typical exercise you do in the 80s. It was for fringe people. Vegetarianism, veganism, health food, macrobiotics, that was for fringe people. But I surrounded myself with a bunch of fringe people, moved to the Lower East Side of New York City. And so all that stuff of alternative living was available, including alternative spiritual paths. If you grew up in a Judeo-Christian culture like I did, oh, there's other people with other spiritual ideas. And so that led me down a path of natural medicine and healing. I got into Ayurvedic medicine first, and then I got into Eastern thought and spiritual practices, which I feel were like a little bit more broad-minded and open a wider gate of understanding spirit than how I was taught.
Wow. I'm noticing a little bit of a parallel. So how old were you when your father passed?
He went into a coma when I was 19.
When you're 19.
And then when he left this world when I was 22. So 3 years he was in a coma. So the coma itself was very shocking because it's a place of ambivalence. It's, what is he alive? Is he dead? Is he understand me? Is he a vegetable? Is he like a carrot that has no thought process but is dying or something? I don't get it.
Yeah. I'm really sorry about that experience. But So you found your spiritual calling at that time. And interestingly, when I found yoga, my mom also was in the process of dying, and that was in my 30s. I wonder if there's something about that energy of leaving or that time when you're faced with mortality that prompts you to seek a deeper meaning in life.
For sure. I think I think those are the biggest catapults for our either spiritual thought or sticking your intelligence in the sand and not thinking about anything. It's when people turn to drugs, when people turn to alcohol, people turn back to their addiction of choice. People want to medicate their pain, or people want to start to say, why? People start to reevaluate their own lives and their own desires and their own choices and their own direction. And I think maybe you and I can relate. And although it was very gracious of you to say, hey, I'm sorry he went through this. No, Mitzi, it was such a blessing for me. Of course, we see it from this vantage point as tragic. From the material vantage point, death is tragic. From a spiritual vantage point, there is no death. There's just a change of bodies. And even not deeply understanding that, but just hearing that, it sanded out the edge of the pain of losing a loved one. But now, 40 years in or 30 plus years in and dealing with this, I realize, oh, his leaving was such a beautiful gift he gave me to really re-examine my life. And now I'm really grateful. And I don't know what I would be now if he didn't die prematurely. And I felt and still feel very connected with my father for that. And right after he left this world, I had reoccurring dreams of him encouraging me on my spiritual path, which was really interesting. It's as if he was there in my life, just guiding me and telling me, keep going you're on the right track, keep going. It was actually quite beautiful.
That is beautiful. I think when I talk to people about their life lessons and the blessings that they've experienced in life, it's always the people who have experienced tragedy who are able to see the most beauty.
Not all the time, but yes. If a person, here's the deal: if we look at this world and with material goggles on, it's very easy to get bitter very quick. Why?
Mm-hmm.
It's a world of loss. It's a world of broken hearts. It's a world of distress. It's a world of people. We invest love and we lose that love. Why wouldn't we feel bitter? But if there's a greater vision, some like intelligent vision, and that's what we're supposed to get in a spiritual path isn't supposed to be there to put our head in the sand. It's to get a greater vision of reality. So, for example, I love gardening. Suppose I didn't know anything about gardening. A gardener comes over and starts lopping away my lilacs, lopping away my berries, lopping away my roses. Without any knowledge, I think, who is this guy ruining my beautiful plants? He's cutting down a mature lilac tree, which if I have knowledge, then I understand, oh, he's not killing it. He's enhancing the growth. He's enhancing the sweetness of the fruit. He's enhancing the flowers and their fragrance and their abundance. And this is how a spiritualist and spiritual goggles see the world. Loss is not meant to crush us. It's meant to inspire us. It's meant to inspire us. And from that, we become more fragrant, fruitful, and plentiful, just like those flowers. But it has to do with knowledge. By adding wisdom, literature, sacred literature, wisdom teachings to your life, we save ourselves from the bitterness that comes inherently with living in a world of matter, which is by very nature temporary, which is a sand castle. I can't build my castle of sand and be upset when the tide comes in. That I can't fall in love with a temporary world and expect for not to crumble. So what you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life. And now the obvious blessings are the easies. What are the easies are, I have people in my life that love me. I have a home. I have family. I have animals. I have trees and plants and gardens that I love. That's the easy blessings. The PhD of blessings is, this guy hates my guts. I hate this particular president or this last president or the next president, or I have a chronic disease, or I just got in a car accident, or that's the PhD of blessings. Can I see good in tragedy? Can I see good in people that don't like me? Can I learn to love anyway? Matter of fact, if this world is just a training ground to learn how to love again, then maybe I can graduate with this blessings PhD instead of just merely the obvious blessings. Hey, I've got dinner tonight. That's a great thing. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the shelter. So yeah, what you're speaking about is high level blessings.
Yeah. Okay. That was beautiful and amazing and wise. I loved everything you just said. But it makes me think about a couple of things. So you have a story in your book about being beaten very severely. And during this experience, you were praying.
I wasn't praying. I was singing, actually.
You were singing. And so can you talk a little bit about how you could maintain that spiritual, that essence of spirituality, that energy, that love for everyone in spite of just being like beaten to a pulp?
You know what? I wish I could explain it. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It wasn't me doing it. It was, there's two factors in our spiritual life. There's us reaching up and there's divinity reaching down. It's not just me reaching up. It's also, see, that's the thing about God, the universe, Jesus, Krishna, whatever you want to call your higher power. It's not just you reaching up. It's them reaching for you. Once we make a declaration that I'm a spiritual being, I'm a spiritual being in this material world. I have a material body, but I'm a spiritual being. And my goal in this life is to remember that 24/7. When we make that commitment to spirit, and I'm going to treat everybody else like a spiritual being, people that I love, and even people that don't love me, I'm going to treat them like spiritual beings. When we start to make that commitment on a regular basis, that is our identity. Then we've started a communion with Source. And then we're going to find that not only are we here for divinity, but divinity's here for us. So how was I singing when I was getting beat into a pulp with guys with baseball bats who didn't have my best interest in mind? How was I doing that? I have no idea how I was doing that. But that whole example, or that whole so-called tragedy, was the greatest blessing I ever got. And why? Because I developed more. I've met some incredible people in this world. I met incredible gurus, incredible teachers, read incredible books, been to incredible kirtans, been to holy places all over India, all over the world, actually. But I've never developed more faith in Source than that moment that 7 guys beat me with baseball bats.
You were unscathed, essentially, right?
I was scathed, but I couldn't walk for 2 days. But I was not. I didn't die.
Right.
I had no broken bones. The real miracle of that whole incident, which you're reading, is both in the prologue, the beginning part of the book. And also I talk about it later. I think the real miracle was not the fact that I didn't get a concussion, break any bones. The real miracle of that story was that at the most tragic moment, which is at any moment, the bat can hit you in the head and actually just give you brain damage, your brain swells and dies. Mm-hmm. But at that most crucial moment, I had a beautiful vision of God. And I was singing in the same way that these great sages you hear about when you read these ancient books of India, and how the sage would be sitting in meditation, preparing to die, calling on God with mantras. I was doing that in the greatest tragedy. And I felt like at that moment, while it was happening, I was thinking, this is a miracle. I'm about to die, and I'm calling out these divine sounds. This is the perfection of my life. That was going through my mind. This is the perfection of my life. And it made me realize, look, I'm not advanced. I'm not spiritually mature. I'm not St. Francis of Assisi. I'm not the Buddha, but I'm getting some special divine intervention. And that gave me more faith in my spiritual practice than anything I ever did before. And again, it's in those tragedies. It's in those tragedies, isn't it?
No, I can imagine that. That's insane. And didn't the guys and girls that were participating in this, didn't they freak out a little bit? They were kind of amazed.
You know what? I can't speak for them. I don't know what they were thinking, but sometimes if you're in rage, which they were in rage, sometimes you can't see what's even obvious. So I don't know what they were thinking.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It's such a great story. And you say, hate the sin and not the sinner. Such a hard thing to do.
It's not that's a Christian statement, but it is a hard thing to do, because I want to give everybody their karma. I want everybody to be prosecuted that harms me or that harms other people. But the fact is that we all can fall into illusion in a moment. We're all capable of doing some very horrible things. And if we haven't already, and some of us can check the box and say, well, in this life, I've done some horrible things. Even if you can't, go through your memory bank and find horrible things that you've done in this lifetime. Perhaps you've done them in a previous lifetime. The fact is, we're all weak and can fall into horrible situations by tricks of chance.
Yeah.
But can we forgive? That's a superpower. Can we forgive? And can we forgive people that make it so hard to forgive them? That's a superpower. So that's why you have heroes in this world. Like in modern world, we have heroes that are football players, soccer players, musicians, Taylor Swift. We have heroes. In the Vedic teachings of ancient India, there are heroes that set an example by their character. Matter of fact, according to Greeks and India, ancient India, that is the goal of education, to develop character, not to develop mathematical formulas, it's not great grammar, etc. Those are subproducts of it. The real goal is to develop character. How many of us are developing character in junior high school? How many of us are doing character in high school, in public high school? Nobody. No. It's the last thing you're developing.
Yep.
Anyway.
So true. I love the way you tell these stories. And the one thing that strikes me in your book is that you talk about being a monk, but you still had all the feelings of Ray, who was not a monk, the New Yorker who wanted to come out and kick some butt. And when people were doing things to you, like you described some people throwing the colored dye on you during the Holy Festival, and you were really annoyed. And it's just so interesting that As a monk, you can renunciate certain things, but there are certain things you cannot renunciate. There are certain things that we find impossible to renounce, like the essence of our true selves. What are some of the things that you have found difficult to renounce, or that you think people may find impossible to renounce?
I think on a spiritual journey, we have certain things that are woven into our material being that we can't artificially just change. And I think that's okay. First of all, the first thing I want to address in your question is I've read books like Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, who there's spiritual people with spiritual callings from their childhood and having mystical experiences. Or you read about Raghunath Journey Home, which is the same thing. American travels to India in the 60s and meets saints and sages. But when I read both those books, both which I really love, it almost as if these people are already divine beings from the get-go. Mm-hmm. In my life, it's juxtaposed about a person who's struggling with faith, but has some faith, who's struggling with good habits, but has some good habits, who's struggling with their mind, but their mind sometimes works in their favor. So I think that was the difference I allowed myself to be perhaps a little overly vulnerable at times to share my struggles. So I think that it's like a curly tail of a dog. The more I hold it straight, it's still going to bounce back to being curly, isn't it?
Yes.
But at the same time, at the same time, for example, I have a pretty big mouth. I don't know if you picked up on that yet. I thought as I become more spiritual, that would just go away. It hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I do find is that the big mouth is still there, but the stuff that comes out of the big mouth, it's a little bit more refined. And that's
absolutely.
Where we don't change the karma, so to speak, of this body that we have. But what we do with the body, what we do with our intelligence, our wit, our language, our thoughts, our talents, our arts, our work in the world, it just becomes refined and purified. Mm-hmm. Our humor becomes different. Our friendships become different. Our ways we relate to people become different. The way we relate to our own bodies becomes different. I think we don't radically change our karma, so to speak, but we refine ourselves. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I listened to your book, I listened to it as an audiobook and I heard your voice. So your voice is like the New Yorker voice, but it's saying these intensely spiritual and profound things. And so I think seeing you in person and speaking to you face to face, I get a better sense of what's behind the voice. And it's really interesting to contemplate the idea that we just make these judgments about people based on the tone of their voice or where they're from or their accent, their regional accent, or things like this. And what we should really be paying attention to is the quality of the words and the language. Mm. It's so interesting.
I like that.
So you said in the book, as you were in the same vein as what we were just talking about, that you do not have to give up everything for God. So what do you have to give up for God?
That's an interesting concept. All we have to give up let me rephrase this. We give up the concept of this is all about me. We have to start directing everything, all of our blessings, all of our gifts. Instead of doing them to be God, we do them to serve God. Right? We don't do. You might be a talented singer, a charismatic talk show host, a great artist, working great with numbers. So we don't say, okay, I'm great with numbers. Numbers cause me to be greedy, so I'm never dealing with numbers again. That's the whole gist of the Bhagavad Gita. The guy is a warrior, and he's got to go against this very extreme situation, which is he's got to fight people on the other side that are his teachers and that are his cousins. And he's like, I can't do this. And Krishna, you think, okay, Krishna is going to give him some good, solid advice. And Krishna says, yeah, you got to fight. That's your duty. Don't you understand? you have to fight, but just trust me on this one. And if you could just trust me on this one, it's going to work out perfectly. Now, you may not be in a position in your own life that you're going to have to kill your relatives and your teachers. But the idea of making a higher choice as opposed to a more carnal, lesser, uncourageous, cowardly choice, that will come up in your life. There's always going to be forks in the road in the course of our day, week, month, and year in our lifetime. So we are made to do this activity. Do I want to serve God or do I want to serve my ego? Do I want to take all the gifts I have and serve my ego to impress other people, to make them understand how cool and grounded and wise I am? Or do I want to actually do this as a servant of divinity, a servant of truth, a servant of reality? And that's the shift. I have to give up that it's all about me and my ego. That's the only thing I have to let go of. I do a podcast. You can do a podcast that's all about you and how great you are and make everybody laugh, and you can make money and get great sponsorships. Or you can do it to spread a message of free will, hope, blessings, truth, light, right? And try to take your ego out of the center. We don't have to renounce our talents. We just have to engage our talent in a spiritual way.
Yes, that's beautiful. And you experienced that too in your life when you left the punk scene and then you went back to it. And that's when you had this realization.
I know. I thought, yeah, music. Look at music's getting me into trouble. It's getting me caught up in my ego. I'm getting caught up in competition. There's people that are envious of my position. I'm envious of people who are above me. If I could only have their fame, why did they get that famous? I should be there. Why do they get that? Who do they think they are? And then I get to a spiritual revelation, like, I got to give this up. This is all a bunch of illusion, and my life's become tragic. And of course, this material world is a complicated mousetrap, and I've fallen right into it. I'm giving it all up. And then the more you read that Bhagavad Gita, you realize that's what Arjuna wanted to do. Arjuna wanted to say, yeah, I know I'm supposed to defend the righteous, but I'm going to go sit in a cave and meditate. No. And Krishna called him out on it. Nope, that's not what you're going to do. You're a warrior. You're going to end up picking a fight in that cave. You're meant to do a battle, but you got to battle for right, for light, for truth. And so we all have a different calling in this world. And because we're all signature people, aren't we? We're signature people with a signature calling. And we have to use that signature in such a way to serve source and humanity at large. And that's how we actually become happy. We have crazy ideas of happiness in this world. Sometimes I remember in the 80s, there was this whole, the potentiality movement. You have to live up to your potential. You have to become the best at this and the best. Guess what? I know people who are the best at stuff. That doesn't make them happy, grounded. It just means they've exhausted their physical, mental potential. Oftentimes they can be really miserable to be doing that. What we really have to be, the real win, the real home run, is I have to be connected in everything I do. Maybe you want to be an incredible athlete or incredible artist or incredible, but it's the incredibleness of our art that's not going to make us great. It's the incredibleness linked up to source where I'm benefiting humanity. For example, if you're a great leader, hey, there's Stalins, Hitlers, Lenins, Pol Pots of this world who were phenomenal leaders, but they were also evil. Who cares if you're a great leader, if you're leading people to destroying other people, right? Let's be leaders that can lead people towards light, love, truth, groundedness that are going to benefit humanity. So yeah, use your potential, but in service of light and truth and love.
It's crazy that as a spiritual being, you have to keep an eye to the fact that it is all illusion. But at the other side of it, you are forced to participate in the illusion to the best of your ability.
Isn't that interesting?
It's crazy.
We have to. I can give one analogy in this regard. That see if this. One time I was writing a song, and I was trying to write a guitar riff, and I could not think of a guitar riff. And as I was sitting down playing the guitar, I fell asleep. And in that sleep, for a moment, I came up with the riff I was writing. And this is a true story. And the interesting thing is sometimes you can use the dream to fix the reality, to assist you to get out of the dream. And that's what we're doing in our spiritual life. We're using the temporary world to connect with our spiritual selves. We're using the temporary world by fully understanding that this is a temporary world. I'm coming together with my children, with my partner, with a home. And although it all seems solid, we know from experience that kids go off and do their own thing. No matter what you teach them, they go off and do their own thing. That no matter where you live, you're going to give up that house. That house, another family is going to be doing their thing in your house. You're going to move on somewhere. All the things that we think are solid in our life, that are pillars, that are like these Roman colosseums, they're all sandcastles. And therefore, there is nothing permanent of this world. I know this inherently. But when I can understand that I am not born in this world just to collect and possess things or people, but I'm actually here for a few days to give love. And if I can really get that, then I can use this dream to enter into reality. And that's what all the great masters have said. Can you be in this world, but not of this world?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
That's what that means.
Can you let go of this concept of revenge, of spite, of your ego was hurt, that I have to forgive. I have to let go of that I'm not the possessor. I'm not the maintainer. I'm not the controller, that there's other forces out there that I can't control, that I don't own anything. In reality, I don't own anything, that everything has been a gift to me. Even my pain has been a gift for my growth. And when I can really do that in a healthy place, I become a being of love. I don't mean to make that sound cliche, a being of love, a being of light, but actually that's what happens, because we are beings of love, because according to Vedic teachings, we are part of God, and we are part of God, and we are here to reconnect with Source. And that is a very loving, benevolent connection.
Yeah. And I love the way you talk about the exchange of energy that goes both ways. It's like so many people feel like they're seeking, they're yearning, they're seeking, and they don't feel that it's also coming down to meet them or coming forward to meet them.
It's like a parent. Like, I have a teenage daughter. If my teenage daughter was to just run away from home and just neglect me and not call me, I would lose my mind. I'd be eager for her to call. I'd be sitting by my phone eager. When is she going to call? When is she going to call? Where is she? I'd be up all night. I'd be riddled with anxiety and stuff. Where are they? I know she has to do her own thing, but where is she? Is she okay? Source, God, Krishna, whatever you want to call your higher power, has an eagerness to reclaim us more than we even have the eagerness to be reclaimed. That's hard to understand. But if you put yourself in a parent and a child relationship, the parent also has a deep investment towards the child. So sometimes we say, I feel a little spiritual today. I climbed a mountain. I have a spiritual revelation. Sometimes we'll say, you know what? I'm going to pick up my mala beads or sit in meditation. Sometimes I'm going to read some sacred book. And we think, that is like a parent getting a phone call. Hey, mom, I'm in Mexico. What are you doing? I'm thinking about you. You're in Mexico. What do you need? Are you hungry? Are you okay? Are you safe? That is a real analogy. You can understand the macro in the micro.
Yeah. But what about people who can't feel it? They can't feel the other end. They don't feel the parent calling to them.
They have to call out then. It is real. It is real. Like you were saying earlier, you'll feel the synchronicity. You'll feel the blessings. You'll see things. Right now, we're seeing things with material lenses. It's like a child is in the womb. There's a Hungarian writer who does this thing. There's two children in the womb, and one child says to the other, one of the babies in the womb says, do you think there's life after birth? And the baby's like, of course there's no life after birth. How would we eat? We get everything from this umbilical cord. I don't know. Maybe we'd eat with one of our other senses. No, how could you? After we birth, it's over. It's just nothingness. And do we ever get to meet the mother? There is no mother. Are you crazy? What are you thinking? There's just nothing after birth. That's it. maybe we could walk. Maybe we could use our hands. We can't. How can you walk? What are you going to walk? And they say, if there was a mother, I'd be able to see the mother. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like we are fully surrounded. The child is fully maintained, surrounded, nurtured, kept warm from the mother, yet cannot perceive the mother. So the child is thinking, the other child is thinking, if you just quiet your mind and sit still, sometimes you can hear the mother sing. Sometimes you can hear the heartbeat of the mother. Oh, that's bull. We are so surrounded and so loved and so cared for and so kept. It's only out of intense arrogance and material goggles that we can't appreciate. And in that, there's nothing but bitterness. Because the material world, if that's all there is a very, very sad place. And that's why an existentialist will just focus on that and just be like, you know what? This whole thing is a stupid game.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I had goosebumps. Completely blew my mind with that story. I've never heard that story before. That was amazing.
Good story.
It is a great story.
It's not mine. I'm taking no credit.
I loved it. All right. So in the vein of sort of spiritual happenings, I want to go back to something that happened in your life that you talk about in your book. You had two separate palm readers predict a very bad car accident for you.
True story.
That is mind-blowing. Did that freak you out? And what's really at work there? I was wondering, as I was reading it, I was wondering, how can he just go on with his life knowing that two people have said this is going to happen to him? Weren't you like on pins and needles the whole time you were in a car?
For those who haven't read the book, when I was a monk, I had given up doing music and I was walking in this village in India. And I saw that I'm always really interested in metaphysical things and pseudo-spiritual things or occult things. So when I found this palm, and I've been to a lot of palm readers, but none of them seem so bona fide. But I met this one who just knew everything about my life. It was shocking. And the first thing he said was, "You're a famous musician." And I was just like, he didn't know me from Adam. I'm wearing a robe walking around West Bengal. And he just called me out and knew everything about me. And he ended up by just saying, "You're going to be in a tragic car accident, but no one will die." And then years later, after I started doing music again, and I had a hit record in Brazil, the record company threw a big party for us. And there was a famous yogini palm reader from Brazil, a celebrity status lady. And she read my palm and said all these things about my travels through South America, which interestingly enough, all came true. Then she said, "Oh, you're going to get in a tragic car accident." And I said, "Well, what can I do to change it?" You can't change it, but you won't die from it. So how do I understand palmistry? It's like astrology. If you understand Vedic astrology, Jyotish, these things, our karma, we tend to think we have so much free will. We do have some free will, but it's limited. We have major things that are going to happen to us in our life. If you don't believe this stuff, do your Vedic astrology and be quite shocked, because I've done it so many times, have had it done for so many of my students. It is mind blowing. Same with palmistry, a good palm reader. They can tell you all these things. Why? Because we have some karma and there's some clues, but it's a language. And it's, if I want to understand Italian, I have to take an Italian course. If I want to understand the language of an automobile, I have to take a mechanics course. I can't just open the hood of the car and expect to understand what's going on. So there's a way to understand your karma. And there's ways to refine yourself in such a way that you don't make choices that implicate you deeper in bad karma. Right? Suppose I'm walking through the streets of India and I get hit by a wandering bull. I want to turn around and hit that bull with a stick. So if I get hit by the bull, that's my karma. How I react to it, that's my free will. Does that make sense? There is free will. And we can enhance our free will by a bona fide yoga practice. That's an interesting thing. For example, between stimulus and response, there's a space. Isn't that true? Between stimulus and response. So when you're acting in what's called a tamasic way, suppose a drug addict, if you've ever known a drug addict or been a drug addict, sometimes a drug addict, they can snort cocaine or take heroin. And you can say they could have been to jail, lost their spouse, have their children taken away from them, lost their career. And if you say, okay, I know you've given up cocaine for a week, would you like some more cocaine? Their answer will be, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Because from stimulus to response, there's no space whatsoever. They call this in India tamasic thought, where there is no space between stimulus and response. They're a complete slave to their karma. And they're implicating themselves more and more in bad karma. Now, sometimes people go through a recovery course where they get 30 years sober. And you might know someone who does a 12-step program. They're 30 years sober. And so someone says, hey, man, do you want some cocaine? They might even remember the feeling, the sensation, the so-called pleasure they had from cocaine. But after distancing themselves from the drug or the sensation or the stimulus, they start to think, no, I don't want it. Thank you, but no, thank you. So because they've distanced themselves, filled their intelligence with some type of reflection, deeper thought, journaling, etc., now there's some intelligence. They've actually enhanced their free will. So we all have some free will. What we do with our life will either enhance our free will or take away our free will, diminish our free will. So the entire yoga system, no matter what spiritual practice you do in the yoga system, it's meant to enhance our free will to get us to what the yogis call sattva guna. But higher than that is our spiritual connection. And that's where our free will comes in. What are we going to invite into our life to develop that spiritual connection? I can't remember how you first asked this question, but that is my answer.
It was fantastic.
Okay.
I feel like we could talk for a long time, but I have to get
great questions. Thank you.
I always ask all of my guests at the end, what are the biggest lessons that you have learned in your life?
Great question. I think the first one would be take some time in the morning just for you and God. And that can come in many different forms. It could come in form of meditation, prayer, chanting on beads, singing, reading wisdom literature. And if you can do that for 5 minutes, increase it to 10 minutes, increase it for 15 minutes. Don't be like, do you remember in the old days, you grew up the same generation as me, we would wake up to an alarm clock radio that's playing like the Rolling Stones. That's the first sounds we heard in the morning. And then we're go. Don't do that. Have some special sacred time for yourself and for connection. And if you can master that in the morning, then set up some time in the evening. Sure, we all have to work in the course of the day, or we have kids, or we have duties, or whatever. Set some time in the morning, set some time in the evening, and sandwich in your busyness with sacred time. Mm-hmm. That will change your whole life.
It will. And what about your blessings?
What are my blessings?
Yeah.
Oh, my whole life has been a blessing. Perhaps the greatest blessings with the messengers that have been sent to me in my life, people that have really changed the trajectory of my life. Because it's not like they gave me a better sense of humor, some people say it's by my teacher's mercy. And people say, come on, don't be, not by your teacher's mercy. Like, you're a funny person, or you can tell a good story. Your teacher can't tell a good story. Oh, it's you. Own it. No, because even if there is some good quality I have, it's by meeting spiritual teachers. They've taken your whatever ability you have. I like to tell stories. So they've taken my stories, and instead of me using them for my ego, now they're getting used for something that can help other people, help myself, and use them to serve a greater good. All the teachers in my life, great blessings for me. Even the greatest tragedies in my life have been great blessings for me. So I just feel too blessed for distress.
Oh, that's beautiful. Everyone should grab your book, Punk to Monk. And where else can people connect with you?
Yeah, my website is called raghunath.yoga. Every year I take people on these really sacred transformational trips to India. If you've ever wanted to go on a sacred journey to India, I do that. And then this year we're also doing a Nepal trip as well. So that's my website, raghunath.yoga. Also on Instagram, I post everything on Instagram, Raghunath Yogi, Raghunath Yogi. And check out my book. You can get it anywhere, or you can get it on Audible for those who travel a lot and prefer hearing an Audible book like myself. I like audiobooks too.
Yeah, that's how I read it. So we're going to have all that information in the show notes. And
Thank you.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this amazing conversation. You've set the tone for my day way higher than it normally would have been. And I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
I'm grateful for you too, because you asked those questions that made me speak about these topics. You could have asked anything. We also have a daily yoga podcast too, not on like up dog and down dog, but a podcast on the philosophy of yoga. And we talk about it on a regular basis. So it's called Wisdom of the Sages. If you can put that in your show notes as well.
Yes, I will.
It might be up here. It might be right up your alley. Thank you so much.
I've been listening to it.
Oh, thank you so much.